Mr. Berry, it's nice to have you on the program again. Let's just get into it today's business. Our viewers want to know, what is a solid management?
Yes, first of all, we have to talk about the solid waste. Solid waste is any waste that we produce from our homes, our industry, and our offices, and our commercial areas. And when we say solid waste, we are talking of all the waste that we can handle with our hands, which is opposite to liquid waste, which is fluid and liquid, which we can't hold. So there are so many different types of solid waste. But we can then say, in general, we divide it into the four main components I've said. So first of all, we've got what we call domestic waste, which is waste which is coming from our homes. And then we have waste which is commercial, which is coming from our offices. And then we have also from our shops. And then we've got industrial waste, which is coming from the industries, which is of solid nature. And then we also have what we call litter in general. This is waste that is thrown away in our streets, which is also becomes part of the solid waste management mix.
Okay, so why is the issue of solid waste now a topical issue around the world?
Yes, it's a big issue because the rate at which we are producing waste is increasing. You see, when we have got more population and we have got more people having a lot more disposable incomes, and the consumption that we are doing in terms of food, in terms of clothes, in terms of tools, equipment, we are producing so much and consuming so much. So it becomes a very big problem to deal now with the products that we no longer want to use, or byproducts. Like if we have used our mobile phones, for example, and then they are dead and we are no longer able to use it, we now have a challenge to say how best can we dispose of that particular waste. So it's a growing problem because of the rapid urbanization, a rapid increase in population, but also increasing income levels, which are pushing our consumption levels in terms of things like food, clothes, also equipment and material that we use in our everyday life.
Okay, so having said that, what is the state of solid waste management in Zimbabwe?
We have got a serious solid waste management challenge, but it's not just a Zimbabwean issue. Most of our developing countries, they've got a similar problem, where we have got a lot of waste which is being produced, solid waste, but it's not being collected. So we are saying we are generating a lot of waste, but most of it remains within our cities and towns. It is not collected to be disposed. And most of the waste that we are supposed to dispose or throw away, we are not throwing it away in a safe way. We are dumping the waste in places that we call waste disposal sites. Most of them, they're just open ground where we just go and throw away every type of waste that we no longer want to use. In some cities and towns, we are looking at disused pits. For example, in Harare, if you look at Pomona, a Pomona dump site, Kwal, it used to be a Kwal. So after people stopped using it as a Kwal, then Harare decided to use it as a dump site for our waste. But when we throw away that waste into such a pit, when the waste starts decaying, it produces a lot of toxic pollutants, which also pollute the groundwater. Some of it is of gaseous nature, the gas that also pollutes the environment. So that's why solid waste management is a very serious topical issue, not just in Zimbabwe, but also globally.
Okay, so what are the main impacts of poor solid waste management?
There are many impacts. First of all is the wastage of most of what we call waste. For example, if you look at our plastic that we normally throw away, some of the plastic could be used or reused. But when we throw it away, it means we need to produce new plastic. And the production of new plastic is also related to increase in emissions and also like climate change, for example. Each time we produce a new glass, a new bottle, a new can. We are consuming a lot of our natural resources, but also a lot of energy. And most of our energy that we use in the industry to produce the cans is coming from what we call fossil fuels, like coal, like gas, and that is causing a lot of pollution, air pollution, because there's a lot of carbon dioxide that is produced when we produce those new materials. And remember, we are talking of climate change. So these are the gases from industry that are coming from our high production of goods and services, which is now leading to increased emissions in terms of carbon dioxide, and then pushing our temperatures to the level where we call global warming or climate change, which is a very big issue on its own.
Okay, so let's say in Zimbabwe in particular, you're talking about plastics, you're talking about things like cell phones. Let's look at Zimbabwe. Can you just tell us how best people are doing to manage the waste in Zimbabwe?
Yes, so the first thing is that if we look at government level, I think around about 1998, they came up with a strategy which is called the Integrated Solid Waste Management Strategy, which was supposed to modernize the way we manage our waste, especially in our cities and towns. And a solid waste management integrated approach, it means instead of throwing away all the waste, everything that we produce, we recover as much as we can, and then only throw away something that cannot be recovered, something that cannot be reused. So we are talking of using different ways of dealing with the waste, like we recover our cans, we recover our plastics. If we look at our organic waste, that is the waste that is coming from our kitchens, from our gardens. That organic waste, then we promote it so that it's not taken by council and being thrown away at the dump sites, but it is used for things such as composting or producing gas and energy.
Okay, so let's discuss more after this short break. We are taking a short break. We will be back soon. Just stay with us. Welcome back to People and Earth. We are discussing solid waste management with Engineer Beri. So as you were saying, Engineer Beri, you're not yet finished.
Yes, so I was talking about the government coming up with what is called the Integrated Solid Waste Management strategy or approach, which is based on not throwing away everything that we produce, every waste that we produce, but looking at ways of reusing the same waste for different purposes. For example, you recover your plastics, and then you can use that plastic for energy, for reuse, or you can use it for packaging other things that, for example, if you recover your plastic bottles from drinks, cool drinks, you can then use the same to package other things that we don't consume. And then we are looking at organic waste, which is food waste, which is coming from our homes, our kitchens, and also even our institutions like hotels being converted into compost. And also looking at how best we can use cans like metal aluminum cans, which we use for our drinks, which already most of them are now being recovered. Then the second thing was the Environmental Management Act, which has got some legislations that help the country to reduce the amount of waste that we are producing. For example, using some instruments and laws, instruments such as the extended user responsibility, where we are saying the people who are generating waste, for example, manufacturers of drinks like Deltas and other companies, and also so that they also play a part and contribute to the management of the waste. And we also have the concept of the circular economy, which only last year the government was also trying to look at how best to implement the circular economy. Circular economy simply means we don't throw away this waste that we produce. We find ways of making sure that the waste remains in the economic cycle. So it's almost supporting the integrated approach by saying as much as possible, all the waste that we produce, let's find ways of keeping them within the economy, reusing them for other things, or actually also putting them back into the ecosystem. For example, when we produce our food waste, when we put it back into the compost, we are actually producing manure. So we are not actually throwing away the waste, but we are keeping it within our system. So these are some of the things that are happening at a government level to support sustainable and better ways of managing our solid waste.
Who are the main stakeholders when it comes to solid waste management?
Yes, government is a stakeholder, but see, in terms of solid waste management, we also have other stakeholders, like the residents and citizens themselves, individuals, because those are the ones where our waste starts. Waste starts in the homes, waste starts on the streets. When we eat our food in our restaurants, that's where we start generating the waste. So it starts with the individuals. So the individuals are the key stakeholders. And we are looking at industry, producers, manufacturers of things like drinks, plastic packaging, the packaging manufacturers. We are also looking at the people farmers themselves. When you produce your maize meal, mealies, when you produce your tomatoes, when you produce your oranges, and you bring them to the market, there's always some waste which is generated. The retailers themselves, the shops, there's a lot of waste, organic waste that is coming from retailers. For example, when they bring their tomatoes, and the tomatoes are not bought on time and they rot, and then I've seen some very graphic examples where you find a lot of tomatoes which are dumped. You know, it's not like those tomatoes, they are rotten, but probably because of small things like quality, they're not of the right quality or right color. Sometimes those tomatoes are thrown away. So we produce also a lot of this waste from our retailing. Some of it is not because the food, especially food, it's no longer consumable. It's just because of our, just our tastes and our behaviors and some of these perceptions, like the color of the tomatoes or something like that. But the food could be eaten, but it is thrown away.
Okay, so in your view, what is the main solution to solid waste management?
Like I said, the most important thing is what is happening in most countries. The reason why we've got this serious solid waste management problems is because if you look at the town or city level, we are still using what is called the refuse collection and disposal approach, where the local authority, if it is the city or the town, all they do is to collect all the waste that we produce and go and throw it away at the dump sites that I've been talking about. That's all what they are doing. So when they are saying they are managing waste, they are telling you that we are being able to collect it, all of it, as much as we can, and then throwing it away. And they are also failing because, as I said, it takes a lot of transport and logistics and resources to collect all the waste that we produce and drive. For example, if you are taking waste from Kwazana going to Pomona, it's how many kilometers? More than 30 km. And how many tons of waste we collect every day? Part of it is organic material, which can rot even in Chitungwis, in Kwazana. But we carry it all the way to Pomona so that it can rot there. So we are spending a lot of energy, a lot of transport. So the idea is the integrated solid waste management approach. We are saying if it can be composted, let's produce compost close to where the waste is being produced.
Sure. So can we talk about the integrated solid waste management after this short break?
Sure.
We are talking about solid waste management. It's People and Earth. We are taking a short break. Do stay with us. Welcome back to People and Earth. Thank you very much for watching. We are talking about solid waste management. So, Mr. Berry, as we were talking about integrated solid waste management, you can just share with our viewers what you were talking about.
Yeah, so we have been talking about this integrated solid waste management as a replacement to the refuse collection and disposal approach, which is being used by Zimbabwe, but also by many other cities and towns in the developing countries. So integrated means instead of throwing away all the waste that we are producing, we need to use different ways of dealing with the waste, which include recovery of material, which is normally called recycling. We are talking about things like composting, where we are saying anything that can be composted must not be thrown away at the dump sites. We are also talking about prevention of waste. Some of the waste that we produce, we can prevent in our manufacturing processes, or also in how we buy things. Like a few plastics, we can prevent the generation of waste by not buying plastics every time that we go to the shops. So we are also talking about using things like we prevent, we also minimize the amount of waste that we produce. And then we're also talking things like composting, recycling, and also safe disposal of any waste that we cannot recover. So there's a concept which is called from waste to resource. So we must view our waste as a resource. So it's a mindset change also that we need to look at, and also behavioral change. So this is what we talk about when we say integrated solid waste management. More than one way of dealing with waste. The only way we are dealing with waste most of the time, especially now in our cities, is collection and then disposal.
Okay, so now let's talk about solid waste management and circular economy.
Yeah, so when we talk about the circular economy, we are saying that instead of using waste treatment methods that destroy waste so that it is not reusable within the ecosystem, let's try and as much as possible to make sure that all the waste that we are producing, we keep it within our economies. So it takes again back to the concepts of recycling. For example, when we produce our plastics, we need to find ways of reusing the material that is used in the plastic again in the economy. For example, you know that there's a lot of things happening in terms of where some types of plastic are now used to make clothes. So instead of throwing away the plastic, you recover it, and then you can make some clothes out of the plastic. So you are keeping the plastic within the economy, or within our economy. When you do composting, you are keeping again the waste within our economy. When you don't burn things, you are keeping them in the economy. Because when you look at solid waste management, at the end of the line, the first of all is either we can incinerate, we burn the waste, which is not encouraged, or we throw it away there. So instead of burning or throwing it away at our dump sites, we are saying let's reuse all as much as the waste within our economy so that it remains circulating within the economy. That is what we call a circular economy, where the material that we use to produce what ends up as waste is recovered and reused in the economy again. So this is where the concept of the circular economy operates.
Okay, sure. So now, what is the role of solid waste management in sustainable development goals, or the relationship between the two?
Yeah, when you look at solid waste management, it's one of the major drivers of climate change. So it's one of the four drivers. So it means if we improve our solid waste management, we are also contributing to the combating of climate change. So when we do the climate change effectively, we improve our capacity to develop strong and sustainable economies. And that is part of sustainable development. In addition, you know, solid waste management is also associated with a lot of health impacts. Like if you have got your diapers and they are not well disposed when they are dumped, when there's rainfall, those diapers, they contaminate the water. And when it is contaminate the water with the coliforms from the diapers, people drink the water. Like now in our cities, some of them were relying on shallow wells instead of water from the taps. So there's very high risk of diseases such as typhoid and cholera which can actually be linked to solid waste management. So there are a lot. If we burn our waste, we like plastics, we produce these dioxins and other, toxic substances that have got an impact on our health. And if we don't manage our dump sites well, like what happens at Pomona, almost after every few years it burns, and there's a lot of toxic fumes which are produced, which actually we inhale. Most of the residents, especially around Mount Pleasant, Marlborough, going to Warren Park, sometimes as far as Kwadzana, they're affected whenever there are these big fires that are coming from poor solid waste management, especially like in Pomona. So these are a lot of other things that are associated with solid waste management.
Okay, so you are constantly referring to the Pomona dump site. What is your take on the Pomona waste to energy project?
The first thing is, I think from a government point of view, you also need to understand that the Pomona dump site was supposed to have been decommissioned a long time ago. So the central government has been asking council to come up with a rehabilitation and decommissioning plan for Pomona, but I think it has not been coming. So as much as we were using the Pomona, we are actually using it. At law, it was using it illegally because it was already decommissioned. Harare City was supposed to come up with an alternative waste disposal site, but I think it didn't come early enough. So I can understand that part of what is happening actually at the moment at Pomona is what is called reclamation or remediation of that site. Because once you decommission a dump site, you need then to remediate it, to restore it so that it can be used for other purposes. So this is what council should have done a long time ago: decommission it, stop using it as a dump site, and then remediate it so that it can be used for other purposes. So it's a complex situation, but you can also understand where central government can be coming from when they decide to take over and do what they are doing, especially the first part, which is the reclamation of that site. It was already decommissioned. There were so many legal court cases which were already in the courts with regarding to Harare City and being requested to make sure that they manage it safely, and also they have a decommissioning plan so that they stop using it as the disposal site for Harare's waste management.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Berry. I hope our viewers have learned a lot on solid waste management. Of course, thank you our viewers for watching People and Earth. Do stay safe. Until next time, keep well.